Greetings all, this is Meten from Plutonic Planes, and
Tala from Divine Heretic Astrology.
so it's us, Tala and Meten. Sometimes we call each other Mario and Tula, but
hmm
we
In
like
our
to
other
have
in our other lives,
in our other
their
simultaneous
avatars in the metaverse.
incarnational,
hmm
uh, yeah, avatars in the verse. Okay, so we're gonna do Venus today.
We're gonna do Venus. That sounds kind of bad. Maybe we shouldn't go there.
Like,
To
yeah,
go over
because I
Venus
said it like
today.
that too.
Planet of love.
Yeah, so this is the planet of love, and I'm gonna start with saying there's a lot of problems I find with the modern interpretation of Venus just being about beauty and pleasures and surface realities. That's all nonsense. That's not just what it is. Venus, like Jupiter, is a force that binds. Jupiter is a force that pulls everything towards it, endless expansion, right? Venus is also a force that pulls towards it, but instead of being a coercive bind, like Pluto perhaps, or Uranus or Neptune, Venus is a bind. It's a special binding. It's a uniting of love between oneself and one's heart, or oneself and another. It's not, which I think some have said or some think is like a Venusian love, like a lesser octave of Neptune, right? It is not an expression of romantic love. It's not. That's another false concept. Venus is an expression of authentic love after the effect of the narcotics goes away, right? The attraction we feel towards another is initially a drug because our body is like it's like a pharmaceutical factory. It produces all these drugs because we kind of live in a body that's, how would I say, the first evidence starts with a bicameral mind, right? The enemy lives inside of us, is the concept, right, that Jung talked about. We have an unconscious mind and we have a conscious mind. But we don't know what's happening in the unconscious mind unless we do dream work, right? And we look at what kind of subterfuge is happening in the dream space. So just like in that realm, in the realm of the heart, there's also a shadow. And that shadow is the drugs that fuel these intoxicating fantasies, which are the romantic fantasies. But the true nature of Venus has to do with a union of authentic value because, and you know why? It's because it's voluntary. It's a voluntary union. Other binds through other planets are coercive, but the bonding and the binding that happens through Venus is voluntary. It's a choice. And human beings have that choice to bond with another. And that choice is made real because there's two forces that they come together and they can be with each other. Not become one, but they can allow each form to exist, each type, each person, each individual entity can continue to exist as they are, but there's a binding between them. So it's not like an absorption of one person into the other, because those relationships always fail, right? Or, I mean, it's a meeting of hearts. It's a meeting of certain frequencies. It doesn't have to be exact. People could be in varying frequencies, but it's a union where two people are made stronger than if they were just each one apart. So it's a voluntary union that brings up the nature and power of both individuals. And Venus expresses this union. And of course, we talk about beauty. Here's another like false kind of conception. We talk about beauty as something, something's pretty or something's beautiful, and oh, it's just surface. That's not who that someone is. I don't think so, because beauty is an expression of form in symmetry. This has been analyzed and studied by anthropologists and other cultures, and they've actually done well with it because it has to do with the ideal symmetry relative to that particular culture. And form is the manifestation of essence. So beauty is expressed as we present ourselves as humans is very important because it is the outer manifestation of the inner. And I'll add one last thing, Tula, and let you jump in. Another thing about beauty is it's been said that beauty expresses truth. Now, in astrology, and especially in human design, we're taught that Pluto is what clears up the fraudulent in order for the authentic and the truth to come forth. And it is our truth that we come to terms with again and again in our lives. But Venus expresses the truth of form, or expresses truth through form. I'll give you some examples. If you look at art, architecture, even music, the highest, I would say just the highest maybe, how would I say this? The most perfected form of the expression of art, whether it's in architecture or music or sculpture, anything, the highest form of art is going to express some part of the truth. And how is it going to do that? By expressing the grotesque. So true art that expresses the truth of Venusian essence of being is going to have a shadow to it. Think about the old Gothic cathedrals with the gargoyles and how exquisitely sculptured they are, right? And what is that expressing to us? It's expressing to us some hidden nature of reality that we experience. Think about music. Is the best music the music that where people jump up and down and screaming how happy they are? Is that the best? Is that what we think about when we think about edified and high art? Is that what we think about music that just makes us happy and, false? No. Art, like music, will express a dark side. And usually it's the most morose and the most suffering aspect of life that music unveils in such a way that it gives light to it. It gives honor to our suffering. It honors both the sacred and the profane. And so my argument is that all art expressed through Venus, all beautiful art, expresses truth. And so I think I'm faltering here and falling into a kind of paradox of truth is Venus, is form, is beauty. And I'm also not talking about something that's pretty, because pretty is just something that colors an environment. But beauty is something that presents itself in such a way that it encapsulates the balance of how truth expresses itself in reality. And I'll stop there.
Well, I was going to say with structure, it's very interesting. Well, first off, there is such an indication that, Venus started out as kind of this very soft, weaker version of this goddess. And then, she kind of morphs into, 'cause, yeah, she does rule, joining and coming together and beauty, but she also rules like victory and war and prosperity and fertility, So it's like she became like this really destructive war goddess, like in a lot of myths. She's like really destructive to men. And it's interesting because I know we were talking about um, the whole thing of the Egyptian god. Is it what's his name? Arum, right? Where he makes the universe.
Araman? No.
No,
Oh,
Arum?
Apophis? Are you talking about
Um,
Apophis or
no, Amun?
Amin Ra? Or
I think it is Amun Ra. Yeah, I don't know why I'm spacing on this now. We can
there's
come
one
back.
that ends with a ton.
No, he's like one of the first gods. Like he just basically makes the universe by masturbating and ejaculating, and then wherever he ejaculates, these these races of people
You
come.
brought this up on Discord. You were talking about it on
Yeah,
Discord.
and then
Oh, you're Seth, not Seth though. You're that's not from the Seth
No,
book.
Seth is his son.
Okay, got it.
Seth is his son. Amon Ra. It is Amon Ra.
Is it?
He has the hand. I can like look through my notes too. But anyways, he has this, you know, he has a hand that helps like stimulate him so he can like
You enjoy telling this, it seems.
and literally this hand turns into like a goddess eventually. But it's just funny, like, he
Oh,
has
the
to
hand turns into a goddess?
yeah, the hand of Arum is like a big thing. And then it morphs into like, a different version. Because when you look at all these like, you know, Osiris, for example, it's Eye of Iris. It's just kind of the feminine kind of been taken over again by the masculine. And so this happened to Venus, right? She was so-called this when is this? Hang on, let me just look here back to my notes here. Just talking about how like, there was I can't remember the name of the original god, but she literally was taken over by Orfeo, a serpent, and it like encircles her 7 times and then forces her to give birth to the universe. So it's kind of the feminine being taken over. So we have like two different versions, right, of this, like probably the Atlantis transition, the water wipe of memory between going from a primarily, ma matriarchal culture to more of a patriarchal culture. And you see it in all the Venus myths. And one of the things that is really controversial with Venus, you see people is using like, especially in metal music, using like the pentagram, but it's kind of funny because it's stolen from Venus. She
Yeah, it's
traces it
Venus.
in the sky as she goes through her stations when she stations retrograde over an 8-year period, and it's known as like the pentagon of the petals of Venus as well, like the five-pointed flower. And these are why the stars, like the U.S. flag, all the flags, the stars are all the stars of Venus. There's like a direct connection there because she's big in Freemasonry, and the founders, obviously, of the U.S. were as well. So it's kind of this takeover where people don't realize like this is like a feminine symbol and it turns into a rose where it somehow turns into, devil worship in the pentagram, which is the whole thing back like, is Lucifer
The
really
morning
Venus?
star, the morning star, which is
Yep.
Venus.
Yeah, right,
Or the
exactly.
evening star, if we get into the Venus star point. It could be
Right,
either one, depending on what time period we're in.
right. But I think a lot of there's a that chapel is in Scotland. It's called Rosalind Chapel, and it's built according to Venus. And there's it was obviously heated to a certain degree where all these frequencies are pronounced. Like her cycle is at 584 days. So that number is also like a frequency number. There's a lot about the takeover of Venus. And the only other thing I was going to mention too is that, she rules, there's all these connections with Venus. You can find the original imprints of her being this mother and the fertility because she rules copper.
I'm gonna turn my screen off for a second, and then I'll
Yeah.
come back on. Sorry about that. All right, go ahead. She rules
She
copper. Yes, we know
She
that.
rules copper and she rules fruit, peaches and plums. And if you cut an apple open, like you'll see that there is the five-pointed star of Venus inside. So this big association with things becoming ripe, fecundity, like, prosperity, the soil being rich. And remember that what was that book? It was like men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
It's supposed to be a
Remember that
good
whole
book.
book? And there's this whole thing. So, it's
I
interesting
read
that
it
I
too.
just want to point this out too in the male and feminine because, men have more iron in their blood. They're less likely to go anemic because they're ruled by Mars. And women have 33% more copper in their blood than men do.
Did you know that women run at like 130 volts, and that men only run at like 60 volts?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the biofield's been measured as far as how many like EMF or whatever volts it has. And I think women's even more than 120. I think it's like 150.
That's interesting.
Um,
I have a peach tree in my backyard, and it's getting this thing called curly leaf. It's like I guess, a fungal air transmitted, thing that affects all these fruit trees. And the treatment for it is applying copper to the peach tree. So
wait, trying applying copper to what?
you spray copper on the peach tree. It's like a known thing for what they call curly leaf disease, which is really predominant amongst stone fruit trees. So the treatment is copper. That's the remedy. So it's just interesting. That's why Venus rules copper, the whole connection there. Anyway, should we, what else do you want to say
Can
about?
I want to add one more thing if that's okay? Because, and I know we didn't agree to this because we were said we were going to get right into the signs.
I'm
So,
going back to our contract and then.
so try to say no and try to stop the video if you can. But I'm just kidding. Okay, so what I wanted to introduce was the importance of Venus and Mars in the chart and why we want to understand what that means. Because people are going to watch this video and they're going to say, well, my Venus is in this sign, so I love this way, and this is how my heart works, and that's true, but you can't separate Venus from Mars. They're polarities. While Venus is our love nature and how we embrace the other, Mars is how we create our boundaries. And so it's really important because Mars is able to, we need Mars to establish our separate identity. Or Venus wouldn't be able to operate properly. It would just be all Venus and one would lose themselves into their beloved, right? Lose their identity. And that's always the danger of Venusian love type relationships. So one of the themes that I think doesn't always get acknowledged in Venus is that Venus expresses itself, or the beauty of Venus expresses itself not just as aesthetic, but as something functional, something with utility. So each Venus sign has its own utility, its own function. Not just the way that it loves or expresses its beauty, but it has a function, a purpose to it, a functionality. And that works with someone's Mars in their chart to create that polarity of balance in relationships. Whereas this is me with the other. This is me. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Because Mars severs and Venus joins. And also that's Carl Jung when he did his big analysis about astrology, which he was reluctant to really publish. He kind of hints at it, but there's more if you kind of look in his notes and uh, to his assistant, what's her name? Marie Franz. I can't remember her correct name, but he talks a lot about this. Like when he does couples, looking at couples astrology, they either have Sun and their Moon are conjunct, or they have Venus. Either both partners have Venus in the same sign, or their Mars in one sign and their Venus in the other, so they're compatible. He found that that was like the biggest compatibility in relationships.
Both of
And it
those
works
two.
with friends as well too. Like if you have Mars in the same sign as someone, you're going to have really similar energy, and you'll be good at establishing boundaries with that person because Mars establishes boundaries. It severs, but doesn't.
Oh yeah, I mean, like one way to look at, because there's problems with each Venus sign. You could say that Sag falls in love with love, no, or Libra falls in love with love, and Sag falls in love with the adventure, not the person that they're with.
Or
And you
Sag
could
falls in
say,
love with everybody because it's like the notorious cheating Venus sign.
yeah. So there's problems with each, but that's established out of context, because when you're a woman with Venus and Sag, a man with Mars and Sag is going to handle that issue, and not by any type of will. It's just automatic. That's the energy. Just like Venus and Gemini gets bored. You know, a Mars and Gemini will just be so loopy, so crazy that how can the Venus and Gemini ever get bored? You know,
Right.
you follow? So it's like the solution is in the Mars Venus dynamic, and
Yeah,
that's kind of
that's a great way of putting it.
because that's what it is. And one other thing I want to add about that is another reason why relationships fail is because an underdeveloped Mars or an underdeveloped Venus. So a developed identity has to have both Venus and Mars. So it's good for everyone to know, and we'll do Mars after this video, at some point.
That's why it really ties into to like all the archetypes because when we look at like art and there's always like the warrior women and then there's always the sensitive men. It's combining the two sexes, right? The archetypes of both.
Yeah,
It's
it could be reversed too. It could be the woman's
the
Mars to the man's Venus.
right.
It's
It's
still creating that.
the animus and the anima.
Yeah, it's still creating that kind of circle. And so I just want to express that I don't want to underestimate this. The power of Venus And I think, Tula, you mentioned its power in nurturing motherly love as well, as like
Hmm.
a mother role. Okay. Because it is similar to the moon, in certain
And
effects.
it's fertility. When you do medical astrology, it's like the state of the Venus. Like if someone is having issues not being able to, have children, that's the first thing you're going to look at.
Yeah.
So, like, if you see Venus in someone's fifth house, the house of children, and you look at the condition of that Venus, how is it? Like, is it in good shape? Is it in its domicile, exaltation, or is it just, kind of wandering lost, like it wants to have kids, but it's broke, or, so you look at all these aspects of it.
Yeah, so there's a lot here, but so let's go ahead and get started. And should we start with Taurus since it's exalted? It's the one that gets the credit for being exalted in Venus. Should we start there and then do the circle?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
I have
so
I have Venus in Taurus, and as someone pointed out, so does Jeffrey Dahmer. He was also a Libra rising. So, but
I know his moon though, but I won't mention
oh yeah, yeah, that's a whole
that.
nother podcast though. But yeah,
What's that?
but I have Venus in the eighth, so just like Jeffrey Dahmer. But anyways, Venus in Taurus is just I think in exaltation, it's going to be there for its partner no matter what. It's loyal. It's not like a cheating Venus. And I can say this, it's interesting because I have Venus rejoicing in my chart also by hemisphere. Even though I have like a night chart, she's in a different hemisphere away from like the
Oh my God,
sun,
that's so important to underscore for the folks listening because
right? Because
it's
Venus really like
it's yeah, it's greater access to relationship success in a way.
exactly. So, depending if you have Venus as the evening or morning star in the chart, you can just look and see if is it ahead of your sun or is it behind your sun? Because Venus wants to be in the evening. I mean, it's connected to the moon and intuition and the
Aren't you a
mystique of
morning star?
feminine. Evening.
So you're a warrior too? I'm evening star too.
Sorry, yeah. Hmm.
Morning star is not the warrior. It's I forget. Probably the lover.
The morning star would be the warrior.
What do you think though of this? Like I kind of brought this up already, but what do you think about because I was talking about in the beginning, and usually it's associated with Taurus. And it's the idea that Venus, it's the idea of the attributes of Venus and Taurus or just Taurus energy kind of expanding and taking over the definition of Venus. This is what I was arguing about in the beginning, where people say that, oh, Venus and Taurus, very fond of luxury, comfort, or they're saying Venus is that. Is that like bullshit? What do you feel like?
I don't think Venus, yeah. I mean, I don't think Venus in Taurus is necessarily about, I think more rising sign or sun in Taurus would be more showing those examples because the Venus is just simply how you are in this way of love. And it's just the stability which in the fixed sign, but it also kind of shows, I mean, all the planets kind of show, even from this like gnostic perspective, like evidence of just being not what their true selves were, and they're kind of just been molded into a different kind of version. Like Venus goes from like the nurturer to like the basically like being destructive towards men aspect I was talking about later in mythology. And we have this kind of in Taurus because, the sacrificial bull is Taurus. So you know, yes, we call it by its exaltation, but this is through the lens of many years of not being many centuries of not being a society where women's intuition is really trusted.
Hmm.
So it's a little corrupted.
Got it. That makes sense. Do
But
you
I would
think?
say yes, Venus and Taurus it's just a solid. I think the main thing of that style is that it's just going to be a very for the most part, fairly loyal.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Do you agree that Venus rules Taurus, or that Venus is the ruler of Taurus? Do you agree with
Well,
that?
it's well, yeah, I think Libra, obviously, Libra and Taurus.
Do you think
I'd
it's
say
more
so.
accurate for Libra and less accurate for Taurus? What do you think?
I think it's also very accurate for Taurus. I think they're probably equal because the moon is in its exaltation in Taurus too, right? So the connection of the moon and Venus.
There
I
has
mean,
been some question though. People have talked about that they don't think that they're not entirely sure that Venus rules Taurus because the Taurian appetite, different aspects of because those attributes that I was listing, you know, Taurus energy is very passive and long suffering, right? It
A
takes
lot of
time.
people say that Taurus is actually should be represented by the Earth itself, and I also see that as a viable framework, you know.
I like that.
How more grounded are you going to be if, like, the planet that represents your Venus is actually the planet represented by, the one that you're actually sitting on at the moment.
I think that's brilliant.
It's
Um,
Earth.
okay, so we can finally start. Let's see. Let's see if we can. I don't know.
Right.
We're gonna give it a try. So we just did actually. I'm so confused. Okay, now Venus and Gemini.
Venus and Gemini.
I'll let you start that one.
Oh, you don't want to touch it, huh? We're always afraid of the Geminis and Scorpios coming after us here. It's just a chatty, flirty Venus. It's fun. It's flitting around. It's very
Can't
it's
be
very
contained. Can't be. Doesn't want to be contained.
can't be contained, and
Can't trap it. It's a butterfly you can't trap.
it
You
brings
know.
that Mercury into the Venus as well because it's very glib and it's Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so
It's
it's
very
very
idealist. It's very ideal. It's looking for an ideal.
yeah, but it doesn't ground itself enough to really it's hard. It's hard to kind of it doesn't even I feel like Venus and Gemini doesn't sometimes even know what it wants. But it's willing to explore. I feel like it doesn't have that destructive quality as Venus as much as Mercury can. Because Venus, I guess, may be considered a benefic planet as opposed to Mercury, which can kind of go both ways and being the trickster. But it's still ruled by, it still has that Venus and Gemini is still going to be chatty because of that Mercury connection, Mercury being in its domicile there.
It's like that idea by Thomas Browning about that the idea that life is something that should exceed your grasp. Like, what you reach for in life, it should exceed it. It should be like the ideal is part of the real
So
almost.
that's a good one for Venus and Gemini. I like that.
Yeah, right? Because it's grasping towards it wants to live in reality, but it's always like reaching for something more.
Beautiful.
Um, what else?
Venus
Anything
in
else?
Cancer.
What's that?
Venus in Cancer.
Okay, Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer is, I would say that it's about the home. Cancer, it's about
Oh yeah, Venus in
holding,
Cancer loves
it's
their
about
home.
holding, bringing the other to its home, luring them there, and then cutting
I
off
have a
their.
good
Just
Venus in
kidding, just
Cancer.
kidding, just
I
kidding.
have a good Venus in Cancer story. I have a friend who's Venus in Cancer, and she uh, was dating this guy, and she was really into him. They just started seeing each other, and then she found out that she was like, "Well, maybe I'll come to your house because we can't meet up here now. I'll cook you dinner or whatever." And he was like, "Well, I don't. Well, we should just go out to eat because I don't have any pots or pans." And she was like, "What do you mean you don't have any pots and pans? You've lived there for 2 years." And she was like, "I can't date you." The ultimate Venus in Cancer because it's just not presenting an attractive domicile that they can share together, you know?
Oh yeah,
I
that's
would
that's.
say this is one of the Venus signs too that I see a big difference in the male, the masculine, the men with Venus
That's a
in
great.
Cancer
That's true. Yeah.
and the women. I feel like men that have Venus in Cancer have a hard time. It's like they're almost like too sensitive and they can be really, really moody, right? Ruled by the moon. But women seem to do really well with this placement. So,
I would agree with that. It's a placement that's also ideal. It's also very idealized. There's much put on the other,
right.
and it can get really lost in those emotions and become manipulative, more so on the male side than the female side, and controlling or like trap someone, and you're with me, you know what I mean? Not able to let go,
Yeah.
not able
Venus
to
in Cancer in men
disattach.
almost acts like Venus, like Mars in Cancer. The male force is just kind of being trapped. It's being submerged in all this water.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the greatest of Venus signs besides Taurus, Venus and Leo. Venus
Venus.
and Leo is regal, performative. articulate, um, but most important of all, it's loyal.
Humble.
How dare
Joking.
you?
Keep going,
How
keep going.
dare you? Um, Venus in Leo is very loyal. I mean, too loyal, and
Yeah.
perhaps expects too much of the other in those regards. But Venus in Leo is very loving, loving of children, loving of life, loving of its pretentious or pompous state of being. Just kidding. But it's it's the king. It's the king. It's the king of hearts.
You know what I love about Venus and Leo, and I always tell this to clients, if they have Venus and Leo, it means that you need to be appreciated and seen for who you are, and vice versa. Like Venus and Leo is really, it's not a shallow Venus sign, and that's like one of the main things I love about it because it's ruled by the sun, so it's the heart, it's the self. So, you can be, you know, if a Venus and Leo, you can be the most attractive person that you think you can be or whatever. And Venus and Leo, if you're not authentic, they would not give a shit about you. They're
Oh,
really good about yeah, the least shallow Venus sign.
yes. Yeah, that's for sure. Now we move to Venus in Virgo.
Oh, I
Venus
feel
in
like
Virgo is very sweet because it, wants to be of service.
yeah, but I feel like this is the saddest Venus sign because Venus is in its fall here and it really struggles. And Venus and Virgo people are just like they're so picky. And I'm just gonna kind of go through all these like stories of like my friends dating, but I have a good friend that has Venus in Virgo and it's in the 12th and the house that's hidden to her and she's talking about,
Does she even know how she feels about things?
she knows how she feels about what, but she doesn't know that she like the example I was gonna give is like she's like this guy seems really great, we get along, there's chemistry, and she's like, but man, he chews his food so weird. And like that one little thing, like overrode like good job, passionate about, his hobbies, like their connection, everything. She was like, I just can't get over it. And sometimes I feel like Venus and Virgo cannot get over being that it's just it's very selective.
It's also a little cool, a little callous, not.
Manly P. Hall talks about Venus. I can't remember which book, but he says that it's just kind of it's so analytical because it's getting everything lined up for its next incarnation. So maybe it doesn't find fulfillment in this one. It's an interesting
It's another ideal placement because reality is not something that's sought. What's sought is the ideal, the
right.
perfected ideal, which is, similar to Pisces, it's polarity, which we'll get to. A lot of these Venus signs are very idealized. And so it would take the other planets, the Mars perhaps, to ground them, to help ground that energy, because that's the problem with, yeah, I mean, anyways, yeah, we'll go through
I
all.
just went chart last week and there was like no Earth in it whatsoever. No, you know, no Earth signs, no fixed energy. And then I did her kid's chart and her partner's chart, and lo and behold, just full of Earth, full of fixed, fixed signs. So, um, you often find, if you're looking for some people are looking to fill the holes in the chart, and that's where I feel like it's not even Venus, but the chart as a whole, people that don't have any, fixed signs, or if they don't have any cardinal signs, they lack that impulse. They're always going to try to also match, they're also going to try to fill the holes, fill the gaps in their chart. So sometimes it's even more about just the Venus to make it all work and kind of come together and function properly. But
Yeah.
mutable Earth, I feel like that's also because uh, Venus and Virgo can fill so many of this, for people. Like it's very like it's mutable and Earth together is kind of like it's the one combination that you think about it and you're like, oh, it's like, it's kind of like it's like a sandstorm. It can like bury things and it can like just be revealed and it's very adaptable. And sometimes being too selective and too adaptable, I think is why that Venus finds itself in fall there. Venus doesn't she doesn't necessarily like precision, you know, but Virgo demands it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well said. So let's look at now the other ruler of Venus, Libra. Now, Libra is another kind of idealized sign, but because Venus represents both a dark side and a light side, it kind of can work well with Libra because Libra really does, even if it doesn't like it, it looks for conflict in order to find peace and harmony through it, whether it's conscious of it or not. It needs to have its journey where it penetrates through, a war of some kind in order to get to some kind of harmony.
A balance.
Yeah, the key being balance, right? But also, Venus in Libra is also is wearing very idealized glasses of what the world is and wants a very idealized kind of presentation of the lover of the other. And so it too can.
And with anything in Libra too, the even though it's such a beautiful place to have your Venus in, they're the vain tendencies of Libra, they're there, People talk a lot about Libra men. It's almost like Venus has a hard time, especially in today's society. It's probably harder where, we do have such a society where there's all these harsh, expectations placed on women. And so when men have, Venus there, it's such a feminine sign and it's all about balance. And, you see sometimes the vainer side taking over, I feel like this is another one of those. Anytime you have like, Venus and these really uber feminine signs and men have that placement, you're going to see kind of like a push-pull of conflict where the men really need to, integrate their anima and their animus and find a way to make it work rather than projecting on women as a whole what expectations they should really be doing, for themselves, their own inner work.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Well said. And then next we have everyone's favorite Venus. Just kidding. I think we'll get tortured if we say this. But
Venus and Scorpio.
Venus in Scorpio, I mean, you can't deny the loyalty and intensity, is exciting, it's powerful, it's magnetic.
They
Um,
can also keep stuff hidden and they can just sit with stuff and brood with that intensity of Scorpio and really like some of the most and it's interesting in a way, but some of the most like people I know that are the most obsessive have that Venus and Scorpio. And she doesn't do well here. She's in detriment. She's in a sign ruled by Mars. So, it's kind of asking, it's almost like it's like what was everyone just calls Venus and Scorpio. It's very emo, right? In this way, it broods, and it's like, but like it's that feeling that you get when you're like a teenager, where you're like, oh, like we were talking at the start of this video of that darkness and making art. Venus and Scorpio loves that feeling, and that's intense for people to have like every single day. But Venus and Scorpio loves it, like they crave it, and they're more comfortable there. And it's just that intensity. Venus and Scorpio, I mean, Scorpio is the most intense sign in that way where it just feels things like, and it sits with it being fixed. It just sits there and just, it's like doing this meditation on intensity and this darkness. So it's very fascinating. It has this bandwidth and capacity to take in this darkness that a lot of the signs don't have.
what about the only thing I think that's really difficult to deal with is the element of control.
Hmm.
There could
Correct.
be
Yeah.
a very strong element of control with Venus and Scorpio where it can really, default to negative behaviors if it's triggered by not being in control of a situation.
I just did
So,
someone's chart that their partner had Mars and Venus conjunct in Scorpio, and and I've heard this so many times that people have one of the placements there where the person they're really, they can be that have that loyalness and that committedness, but they can also be very suspicious of their partner and think that their partner is cheating on them for like no reason whatsoever, with no evidence. Again, it's because it's attracted to intensity. So it's like it needs a job. Venus and Scorpio always needs to be kind of working. And if you don't provide it with that darkness and that intensity, it's going to try to search it out to make it feel that feeling. So, if it's not stimulated enough and not really engaging in the work, it's going to basically create these scenarios that aren't necessarily true, but it needs to have that. It's delusional in a way when it's kind of left when it's not being worked on because it'll create problems just to enjoy that intensity of that darkness.
What is that quote by Nietzsche? Militant men in peaceful times attack themselves.
Oh yeah, right? There you go. Venus and Scorpio, god of
Cool.
war, ruled by the god of war,
All right,
Mars.
let's do Venus and Sag. So Venus and Sag is, it's the rulership of Jupiter. Uh, Venus and Sag wants to have its adventure, as Sag does, and Venus is
Hmm.
happy to go on an adventure. Um,
Do you mean it can have a wandering eye? Because I think this is the most promiscuous of all the Venus signs is Venus and
well, I mean,
Sagittarius.
there's the idea, right, the Venus and Sag is not too preoccupied with the identity of its companion. It's just, just happy to have a companion. You could interchange. It's interchangeable. Almost the partner in crime.
It's the Jupiter in it is expanding its, perimeter of boundaries as well sometimes.
Yeah.
But and Venus and Sag also like I mean, they just love life. So they're always a pleasure. But yeah, sometimes you can get really hurt, Venus and Sag.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what it is. Should we add anything else or no?
I don't yeah, the bluntness of Venus and Sag I also like. The bluntness of Sagittarius in general, I feel like doesn't they're also really funny. They don't get enough credit. They're really dry and funny. So that Venus is going to have this exuberance, like it's jovial, right? Ruled by Jove. It's gonna like live, laugh, love. The official slogan of Venus and
Yeah,
Sagittarius.
the question is, can it
So
can it deal with things as they are, or does it always have to paint a rosy picture of things?
I think it can deal. It's mutable. It's a mutable sign, and it cuts people off with that bluntness. If it doesn't like it, it just is on to the next adventure.
All right, on to the next Venus in Capricorn. Now, Venus in Capricorn, another loyal sign like Leo. Uh,
Traditional too.
Very traditional, similar to Sag in the way of like, it needs all its boxes to be labeled, and Venus is just another box, like any planet, perhaps.
Mhm.
So in its default stage, it's like, oh, I need this, 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 and that. And so if, you fit the bill, you fit the bill. But very loyal, once committed.
And wants to be courted. Like it wants to build that foundation because Capricorn is just, like they're the cardinal sign. They're the initiatory response. They lay the foundation. So it wants to make that framework happen. So you have to if you're courting someone that has a sign, Venus or Mars in Capricorn, you have to have that, okay, you're not going to send like inappropriate, pictures to them right away. You know what I mean? You're going to like go through everything all very formally. What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. And then like, what's the next step? And then, it's traditional in that way. It's got to build the foundation before the Venus really fully will expose herself in that relationship. They need to know you.
Um, Venus in Aquarius, should we do?
Yeah, you want to start with that because
Sure.
I have so many partners I've had. Like I was saying, all
Sure.
my boyfriends have
So
had Venus and Aquarius.
so Venus in Aquarius is loyal. It actually is loyal, but prior to being loyal, it's hard to know them. They don't really present well in the sense of are they interested, are they not? Like they're very cool, and it's really hard to tell with their fixed nature, like where they're looking or where they're really thinking. And so not until you're in the partnership with them will you feel like, you have a partner. And, it's opposite Leo, so the heart is not shown. So Venus in Leo has to work on, being expressive through the heart or feeling through the heart. Like it's really something they need to work on almost because, Aquarius it just wants to process it intellectually. So it wants to understand the aesthetics of love as an intellectual concept, as a frame of behavior. How are we going to act in this relationship? What are we going to do? Almost similar to Capricorn, but a little more idealized, it being air and it being Aquarian in nature and caring for the collective, in the group. So I'll start there. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the one placement where, it would be fascinating if someone did like a survey where they're like, how many sexual partners has this Venus sign had, and this Venus sign had, and this Venus sign? Because I think Venus in Aquarius is one of those. Everyone I know that has these Aquarian placements, they can have these long, really loyal relationships. But then if they're single, then they just don't care. They can be very promiscuous. They can just kind of flip-flop back and forth on a regular basis. So, I have like a really good friend that was such a fucking Casanova. And then he met this one woman, they were together for years, and he loved her, he was loyal, and then, something happened and they broke up, and then he went kind of right back to it. It's just both states were natural for him. Usually when, people are pick kind of more of one or the other, they're more tend to lean one way. But Venus and Aquarius, it's quirky, it's you can't pin it down. It's very, and it's also of the social order, so it's also a very social sign.
Should we move to the final sign, the culmination, the Venus sign that can act as any Venus sign?
It is the ultimate culmination too of Venus and Pisces.
So Venus in Pisces, water sign, very soft, tender, very, very loving. But the other side of that is visible too. The intensity, the extreme emotional volatility, like everything is there.
They always have hope though. I know people that have Venus in Pisces and they've had like brutal, like abusive relationships, and they're always just like, yeah, that kind of sucked, but I just am ready to love. Like they're all right. It's like, and it's in its exaltation, of course, in Pisces. So it's always it can't really get bashed down too much. They're always like almost childlike in their love, and it kind of keeps on, renewing in this way. They just don't let all the bad experiences that they've had kind of really, they don't get bitter. It's rare to see, and it's that's why it's such a pleasant sign too, because it isn't bitter, and Venus is, with the traditional astrology as well. We have all these, the humors and like the tastes and the colors are all, and Venus is also, it's just it's moist and it's wet and it's so Piscean.
And it's very idealized too. I mean, this is one of those that's, has high ideals and can be very almost, like angry or arrogant about what is the ideal that needs to be met. So there's an
Right.
intensity to Venus and Pisces and what's expected.
It can turn into a diva very quickly.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was looking for. Right. All right, that's it. Anything else to add to that? Or
I think that's it. We went through all the signs. Oh, no, we didn't. We started Taurus. We didn't
oh
do
yeah, yeah. So
Aries,
Venus.
which is like ironic and sad because that's kind of the fate of Venus and Aries in real life. Totally completely forgot. So, right, Venus and Aries in detriment. And I say this all the time. If you have Venus and Aries, it's like sending a nurse onto a battlefield. It's like you've been airlifted to this like battlefield to help, and you don't even know who to triage first. People are just lying there, like covered in blood, limbs blown off. Like that's Venus and Aries. It's, Aries obviously ruled by Mars, and it's trying to do it can't take on uh it can't ever kind of resolve itself. What am I kind of looking for here? It can't begin. It starts the work, but it can't begin to finish it. It's so much. It's full of carnage. But it's Aries, so it's initiatory and it's brave and it goes forth, and it tries, but it's just overwhelmed. The harshness of war is a lot for, the feminine psyche.
I mean, there's a brilliance to Venus in Aries, a certain awakeness, a certain awareness, but it's too impatient, so it can just, go through lovers or just like take one too quickly, one that
Right.
may not fit, you know? And so it's like fire burning through. And
But
so it
Venus
needs
and
to
Aries
slow
will also
down.
they will do battle for you. You know what I mean? They're the ones that will, like fight somebody or, at a bar or, what I mean? Like intervene if like, they see someone's like, someone harassing someone on the street. Like it's got that. It's brave. They don't think, they just rush in. And if you're in
Yeah.
a crisis situation, it's very helpful.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, very, very courageous expression, very rash impulsiveness to the emotions, and yeah, and real intensity to need to experience life through the other,
Hmm.
both in itself and both through the other. So very exciting, Venus.
Yeah, definitely. Never boring. So I
Mhm.
guess this means we're doing Mars next, obviously, right? That'll be
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
big.
We'll do Mars next, which is the individual nature of the self, and yeah, that's what we'll do, and we'll talk about the nature of Mars, what it is. I know we commented a little, but there's much more. You know, Mars is one of the malefics. I mean,
Yeah, this is our first malefic. Yeah, we can really.
it's important in many regards.
We should probably do a little longer too, like a little more of the history of Mars too and the malefics as well, and what it means exactly.
What means?
Just the malefic planets.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. We did a little with Venus and its kind of female connection, and we'll do similar with Mars. All right,
Yeah.
thanks everyone. I think that's it. That's all we got for you today. Till next time.